Have you ever wondered why so many older women quietly start resenting their husbands as they age? It's not something people talk about at family gatherings. Yet, it's one of the most common emotional shifts that happens in long marriages. Many women who once adored their partners in their 30s or 40s find themselves feeling drained, unheard, or even invisible in their 70s. And it's not because they suddenly became difficult. It's because years of small disappointments, unmet needs, and emotional neglect slowly built up like dust in a room no one cleans anymore. If you've ever sensed a quiet tension between older couples, you're not imagining it. Behind the polite smiles and shared dinners often lies an ocean of unspoken resentment. In today's video, we're diving into the real psychological and emotional reasons older women begin to dislike and, in some cases, even despise their husbands later in life. I'm not here to blame either side. I've lived long enough to know that resentment is rarely born from one big betrayal, it's the result of 1,000 small ones ignored over decades. So, if you're watching this, whether you're a man trying to understand your wife better or a woman wondering why you've grown distant from someone you once loved deeply, this is for you. Now, let's begin. Reason 1: Emotional neglect over time. Most resentment in long marriages doesn't start with betrayal. It begins with being ignored. In the early years, women often pour themselves into the marriage. They nurture, compromise, and take care of everyone else. But as they grow older, they start to realize that emotional neglect has quietly replaced love. What used to be laughter over dinner becomes silence in front of the television. Conversations turn into one-sided updates about chores or appointments. Somewhere along the way, connection faded, and he didn't even notice. For many women, it's not about wanting grand gestures or romance like in the movies. It's about feeling seen and valued. When a woman's emotional needs go unmet for years, her affection doesn't just fade, it hardens. That hardness shows up as criticism, coldness, or indifference. And what's worse, the husband often can't understand where it's coming from. He thinks she's changed. But, in truth, she's reacting to years of being emotionally invisible. Take Linda, 72, who told me, "I spent decades making sure my husband had everything he needed. His meals, his clothes, his comfort. But I can't remember the last time he asked how I felt." That quiet absence of care becomes a wound that never really heals. Over time, it transforms love into quiet bitterness. Many men don't realize that emotional neglect feels like rejection. When a woman starts to feel invisible, she doesn't argue as much. She withdraws. She gives up trying to be understood. And once she stops reaching out, the distance becomes permanent. By the time most husbands realize something's wrong, she's already detached emotionally. That's when resentment takes root, not from hatred, but from deep disappointment that never found a voice. As simple as it sounds, many marriages could have been saved by one consistent act: listening. Not solving, not lecturing, just listening. Because when a woman feels heard, she feels loved. When she feels ignored, she feels alone, even in the same house, and loneliness inside a marriage is one of the heaviest burdens a human heart can carry. Reason 2: The loss of respect and mutual effort. As years go by, many husbands stop realizing that marriage still requires effort. They assume that because the wedding ring has long been on the finger, the work is done. But love in old age is like a garden. If you stop tending to it, weeds of resentment grow. For many older women, that neglect feels like betrayal, not of vows, but of respect. When a man stops trying, stops taking care of himself, stops showing appreciation, stops giving attention, it sends a quiet but powerful message: you're not worth the effort anymore. That's how many wives interpret it, even if the husband doesn't mean it that way. Respect fades when one partner feels taken for granted. What used to be partnership starts to feel like servitude. One person giving, the other coasting. Consider Janet, 78, who told me, "I spent my life making sure we had everything we needed, but he doesn't even notice when I'm tired anymore. It's like my effort became invisible. That's the silent breaking point, when one side feels unseen and the other side doesn't even realize it. As women grow older, they start to crave not romance, but recognition. A simple thank you, a kind gesture, a small conversation, these things mean more than any expensive gift. When those disappear, so does emotional safety. Without it, love begins to turn into quiet bitterness. Many husbands unknowingly let themselves go emotionally, mentally, and sometimes physically. They expect admiration they no longer earn. Yet, admiration isn't about perfection, it's about presence. When a man loses curiosity about his wife's world, her thoughts, her feelings, her needs, she starts to close that world to him. Over time, what used to be two lives intertwined becomes two lonely people living under the same roof. Respect in a marriage is not automatic. It's renewed daily through small acts of effort. The couples who still smile at each other in their 80s are not lucky. They're intentional. They didn't stop trying, because once effort disappears, so does admiration. And when admiration dies, resentment always follows. If you're still watching this video and finding these insights valuable, please comment number 2 below to let me know you're here. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I recommend you subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss any videos. Your support helps us continue creating good content to inform and inspire you. Now, let's move forward. Reason 3, built-up resentment from unequal burdens. In many marriages that last decades, the imbalance of responsibility becomes so familiar that neither partner even questions it anymore. The wife cooks, cleans, manages the home, cares for the children, and when the children grow up, she starts caring for the grandchildren, and eventually for her aging husband. It becomes her role. But the truth is, it's not just physical labor that wears her down. It's the emotional load, the constant responsibility of holding everything together, while feeling that no one holds her. For years, she might not complain. She might even take pride in being dependable. But as she grows older and weaker, that lifelong imbalance starts to feel like betrayal. She starts to think, why am I still the one holding this household together while he sits in front of the television? That thought is not selfish. It's the voice of exhaustion after a lifetime of carrying what should have been shared. Men often underestimate how heavy invisible labor feels. It's not just about chores. It's about planning meals, remembering appointments, maintaining social connections, and worrying about the family's well-being. That quiet mental load can drain a woman's joy long before she even realizes it. And when she sees her husband enjoying the comfort she created without acknowledgement, that comfort begins to feel like injustice. This resentment doesn't appear suddenly. It accumulates silently, like a slow leak in a tire. It deflates affection little by little until one day she realizes she no longer wants to fix it. By then, even kind words can't repair what years of imbalance have eroded. What's tragic is that many husbands would have helped if they understood how much it mattered, but they never noticed. They thought the absence of complaint meant everything was fine. But in long relationships, silence rarely means peace. It often means surrender. To the men listening, if you want to restore warmth to your marriage, start by sharing the invisible weight. Don't ask her what needs to be done. Look around and take initiative. Offer help before she asks. Notice her. Because when she feels supported, she doesn't just rest easier, she begins to trust love again. Reason 4, communication that turns into contempt. Over time, what breaks most long marriages isn't a single fight. It's the pattern of small, sharp words that slowly carve away at kindness. Many older women reach a point where they no longer argue to be heard. They argue to release years of bottled frustration. The problem is, once communication becomes laced with contempt, even ordinary conversations feel like battlefields. What begins as "you never listen to me" becomes "you always ruin everything." Tone replaces logic. Sarcasm replaces sincerity. Each conversation leaves both sides wounded, but neither knows how to stop. The man feels attacked, so he withdraws. The woman feels dismissed, so she attacks harder. The cycle repeats until one day they stop trying to understand each other altogether. For many wives in their 60s, 70s, and beyond, the resentment isn't about one argument. It's about decades of feeling unheard. When a woman feels her opinions don't matter, she doesn't just lose interest in talking, she loses respect. And when respect dies, affection doesn't survive much longer. I once spoke with Ella Lehner, an 80-year-old woman who had been married for 55 years. She said something that stayed with me. It's not the shouting that breaks you. It's the silence that comes after, when you realize he doesn't even care enough to fight back. That silence is what many women interpret as emotional death. But here's the truth. When a husband stops defending himself long enough to really listen, the tension begins to soften. When he apologizes without excuses, something shifts. The woman who once seemed bitter often just wanted acknowledgement. Not perfection, not control, just acknowledgement. If you're in that stage of marriage where every word feels dangerous, remember this. The goal is not to win the argument. It's to protect the bond. If pride continues to speak louder than love, contempt will always win. But if one person chooses gentleness, even after years of conflict, the healing begins there. If you're still watching this video and finding these insights valuable, please comment number 4 below to let me know you're here. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I recommend you subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss any videos. Your support helps us continue creating good content to inform and inspire you. Now, let's move forward. Reason 5: Emotional neglect in the absence of affection. In the quiet years of aging, emotional warmth becomes more vital than ever. Yet, this is exactly where many husbands fail without realizing it. When affection fades, when touch becomes rare, when a husband stops saying gentle words, the marriage doesn't collapse suddenly. It simply grows cold. Many older women don't hate their husbands because of betrayal or cruelty, but because they feel emotionally abandoned while still sitting beside them every night. In youth, passion hides many flaws. But in old age, when physical energy fades, only kindness and emotional connection remain to fill the space. When that connection weakens, loneliness sneaks into the marriage like a slow-moving fog. The wife begins to feel invisible, her words brushed aside, her stories unheard, her needs unspoken. Over time, she stops trying. What remains is habit without heart. Take the case of Margaret, 76, who once said, "We share a home but not a life." That statement carries quiet heartbreak. For decades, she and her husband ate at the same table. But he never once asked how she felt about growing older, about losing friends, about waking up to silence. He thought his presence was enough. But presence without attention feels like absence. What many men don't understand is that women value emotional connection as deeply in old age as they did in their youth, perhaps even more. A soft word, a gentle look, a moment of real listening can breathe life back into a relationship that seems beyond repair. When a husband touches his wife's hand, not out of duty, but affection, something shifts in her heart. The resentment begins to melt, replaced by the faint memory of love that once felt safe. Emotional neglect doesn't always look cruel. It often looks like indifference. But to an aging woman, that indifference cuts deeper than anger ever could. Because anger means she still cares. Indifference means she has given up. If you want to protect your marriage in your later years, show tenderness. Not grand gestures, not lavish gifts, just genuine warmth. Because in the end, it's not the years that make love fade. It's the silence between two people who once promised to never stop caring. Reason 6: The loss of shared purpose. When two people grow old together, something subtle but powerful begins to change. The children move out, the careers end, and the daily busyness that once gave their marriage structure starts to fade. Suddenly, the couple is left alone with decades of history, but no shared direction. For many older women, this is when they realize their husband no longer feels like a partner in life, but merely a roommate in the same house. During their working years, many couples are united by survival, bills, kids, family duties, and endless to-do lists. But when that noise disappears, they must face what's left, just the two of them. If they haven't nurtured emotional connection, shared dreams, or mutual curiosity, the silence between them grows unbearable. For the woman, that silence often becomes a mirror reflecting every missed opportunity for closeness. I once met a woman named Linda, 82, who said, after retirement, I realized we didn't really have a marriage. We had a schedule. For years, her husband had buried himself in work while she held the family together. When retirement came, she hoped they'd rediscover each other, travel, talk, maybe even laugh again. But he had no interest. He had structure only through work, not through love. When that structure disappeared, he became a shell of habit. She became the caretaker of his boredom. This loss of shared purpose often leads to emotional distance that feels like grief. The wife mourns not for what was lost, but for what never truly existed, the deep partnership she once believed they'd grow into. When she sees other couples walking hand in hand, she doesn't feel envy, she feels emptiness. But here's the truth, few couples talk about it, it's never too late to create a new purpose together. It doesn't have to be grand. It could be gardening, volunteering, or simply walking the neighborhood every evening and sharing stories. What matters isn't the activity itself, but the shared intention to live life together, not just beside each other. When that purpose returns, so does warmth. Many men think love fades because of age. But love fades because people stop growing together. When they start again, even at 80, the heart responds the same way it did at 20. If you're still watching this video and finding these insights valuable, please comment number 6 below to let me know you're here. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I recommend you subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss any videos. Your support helps us continue creating good content to inform and inspire you. Now, let's move forward. Final thoughts. In every long marriage, love changes shape, and that's what most couples forget. What begins as excitement must grow into understanding. What once relied on passion must later rely on patience. When either partner refuses to evolve, resentment quietly takes its place. That's why so many older women don't truly hate their husbands. They grieve the emotional connection that was never protected. If there's one thing I've learned watching couples over the decades, it's this: small neglects become large distances. A thoughtless word repeated for years becomes bitterness. An ignored need becomes isolation. But kindness, too, compounds. A single act of care, done consistently, can soften even the hardest resentment. It's never too late to rebuild, but it requires humility, honesty, and courage to face the truth about yourself. So, if you're watching this and you recognize some of these patterns in your marriage, take heart. Awareness is the first sign that you still care. It means there's still something worth saving. Don't wait for the perfect time or the perfect words. Just begin. Listen. Be gentle, because love at its core is not about avoiding mistakes. It's about returning to each other again and again despite them. Thank you for joining us today. We'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment below and share one thing you learned today and how you plan to use it in your life. Your thoughts are important to us, so don't hesitate to share them. Reading your comments gives us great motivation and encouragement. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, please like, subscribe, and share. Your support helps us continue creating good content to inform and inspire you. Thanks for watching, and we look forward to seeing you in the next video.